Hello and welcome to the dungeon. I'm your host Rob. In today's video we're going to be looking at bard spells and my personal choices for bard spells 7th through 9th level. So obviously we talk about high level spells here, and I should say at the outset, all the spells we're going to talk about today are good spells. They're all high level spells, they're all very powerful. But I think it actually gets really important at higher levels especially to choose spells you're going to be able to get a lot of use out of, because the truth is usually you're only going to have one of those spell slots per day. So I don't really want a spell that's going to be really circumstantial and that I'm almost never going to use. I want something that can either like solve a problem that nothing else can solve, or something that's going to be so impactful in like a combat that it is almost like the win condition itself. Or I want something that just provides such great utility that, I'm going to be able to use it all the time, and it's just gonna be amazing every single time. So there are a lot of spells that are in these level ranges that are quite powerful, like Dream of the Blue Veils, an interesting spell that I really like. But would I take it on a bard? And the answer is probably not, because I just don't have enough spell selections that I'm going to be able to justify using that one all the time, when I could have something like Teleport or Force Cage or Magnificent Mansion, for example, right? So anyways, just because I don't choose a spell doesn't necessarily mean the spell is bad. I'm sure that other people will say like, oh, I used this spell and I thought it was great. And you're probably right. It is great because it's a 7th, 8th, or 9th level spell. The problem is that the opportunity cost at these ranges are pretty high. And in particular, when we're going to talk about Power Word Kill and Power Word Stun. And I'll talk about it more when we get to those, but I quite like Power Word Stun and don't really like Power Word Kill, even though they suffer all the same problems and drawbacks. The reason I like Power Word Stun is because 8th level spells just don't have a lot to offer as a bard, and 9th level spells do. So even though Power Word Stun is a worse spell, honestly, it's just the level of competition is so much lower that it ends up being one that I'm like, yeah, okay, maybe I'll actually take that one, right? Whereas at 9th level, it's like, probably not. Anyways, that was like spoiler alert territory there. Anyways, let's just jump into the video, starting at 7th level spells. Force Cage. It's pretty hard not to talk about Force Cage when you're talking about 7th level bard spells, because it's one of the best crowd control spells in the entire game. It's one I talk about a lot. We don't need to go into tons of detail, but the fact that it's hard for the things to get out, the fact that there's no saving throw, and even if they can get out through like a teleportation or like plane shifting type of ability, they need to pass a saving throw to get out. Now maybe they have a legendary save and they can use that to get out, but it's just such a powerful effect that, in a lot of cases, you can just shut down the entire encounter just by Force Cage and then killing the thing in the cage, Now, that can be a drawback, that every fight just comes down to whether or not you had Force Cage available, right? But, that's its own issue. That's more of a DM not making better encounters, in my opinion. But anyways, Force Cage, nothing bad to say about it. It's one of those most impactful crowd control spells in any combat you could have. Magnificent Mansion. I already mentioned this one, but this is like, much like Demiplane, which bards don't have on the spell list, this is just one of those ultimate utility spells where every night I can cast Magnificent Mansion. We can take a long rest in pretty much complete and utter safety. We never have to worry about it. It's just like a super upgraded Tiny Hut spell, right? Now, on the one hand, you might say, yeah, but why do I need it if I have Tiny Hut? And I think there is an argument there to be made. But, it is a lot better, and you can, show off for company. You get that cute elven princess there that you're hoping to maybe, get a little more friendly with. She doesn't want to see a hut. She wants to see your mansion, So, take her to the mansion. Anyways, Etherealness. This is a great scouting tool. I've mentioned this story before, but the only time we ever did it because the Dungeon Master got so irate with us, but we used Etherealness to just basically scout the entire dungeon, find the boss, materialize in his room, and kill him, and just bypass the rest of the dungeon. Like I said, we've only done it the once because the DM was not happy with that tactic, but it definitely makes for a fun story, and it was pretty funny at the time too. Either way, it's one of your best scouting effects in the entire game because it can do things that like a familiar or like a shape change druid probably can't, which is like go through walls and everything else, right? So I do like it quite a bit. Would I take it over Force Cage? Probably not. But, maybe we've already got a wizard with Force Cage or something, and we don't want 2 Force Cages. Well, actually, we probably do, but Force Cage, why are you so good? Anyways, still a great spell. Symbol. I like Symbol, but I just feel like there's better choices. It's still worth mentioning. It's got some really cool, powerful effects, right? I like it more on, say, like a cleric or someone. But as a bard, I feel like I've got better choices. Like Force Cage. Anyways, Teleport. This is one of the ultimate utility spells. It's pretty hard to go wrong with Teleport. Again, if the wizard takes Teleport, then I would rather let him do it since he's going to have way more spells available than me. But if nobody has Teleport, it is pretty handy to have. And what's even safer than sleeping in your magnificent mansion? Teleporting back home and sleeping in an actual mansion. And then, teleporting back again the next day, I guess. Maybe not. Who knows? Although I have had party members do that before, where they just teleport home, took a long rest, teleported back, and continued. Back in like 1st and 2nd edition, Teleport was actually a really dangerous spell. Because unless you'd like studied the area very clearly and carefully, you could go like drastically wrong, teleport into a mountain or into solid rock and just like instantly kill the party. These days, Teleport is a lot safer to use, and therefore it's also a lot less fun to use because, sometimes those hilarious mishaps make great stories. But anyways, Teleport's a great spell. Hard to go wrong. Regenerate and Resurrection. I'm just going to throw these both in the same category. These are both great spells, but I feel like there's a lot of lower level spell effects that can do kind of the same trick, right? It's kind of like what we mentioned with Magnificent Mansion. I like Magnificent Mansion, but Tiny Hut is also really good, and it's only a 4th level spell. Raise Dead is a 5th level spell and does basically everything that I might have wanted from Resurrection. Now, that's not entirely true, and technically you could argue that Revivify does the same thing with only a 3rd level spell. But there are a lot more drawbacks to those spells, so Resurrection still might be worth justifying. But again, it's one of these spells where if I'm only going to have one 7th level spell, do I want to be like, I hope somebody in the party dies so I can resurrect them? Of course not. I'd rather just, cast Etherealness or Force Cage or whatever else, which is something that I'm probably going to look forward to using all the time and not be, please let the wizard die so I can resurrect him. Although that is fun to tell your party members. Lastly, we have Project Image and Mirage Arcane, which are 2 of the best illusion spells in the entire game. Project Image, I have some real problems with it. Number one, if I wanted to use it as a scouting technique, I've already mentioned Etherealness is going to do a lot of same type of job. Honestly, a familiar or a shapeshift druid could do a lot of the same type of scouting if that's all I wanted to use. And I feel like there's just so many better low-level choices that as a scouting tool, a 7th level spell slot is too much to give up. Now, there is a lot of other things I can do with Projected Image. So, it's not like it's just a scouting device, right? But overall, I don't know. I just feel like there's probably better choices. I think it's a fun one. I think if I wanted to play like an illusionist type of character, that might be one I would consider. But overall, I just feel like there's stronger choices. However, Mirage Arcane is one that I like quite a bit. And again, there are stronger choices out there. And in both cases, True Sight kind of just shuts you down, right? Which is very unfortunate because we're getting into the level range where a lot of things have True Sight. But Mirage Arcane always kind of reminds me, if anybody's ever read like the old X-Men comics, there's that one villain, Mastermind, where he could like make these like super realistic illusions in people's minds, and they would withstand like you could smell the illusion and touch things and it wouldn't break, right? That's what Mirage Arcane is. It's just this huge illusionary world, essentially. You can make like difficult terrain where there was none and stuff like that, And it is just a really cool spell, and if you're creative with it, you can have a lot of fun with this spell, I think. Now, is it the most powerful at this choice? Probably not. But like I said, it's one that I like, and I think it's a fun spell. So I'm still going to recommend it, but let's just bear in mind that some of the other ones are probably better choices, but not more fun. Anyways, moving on to 8th level. First of all, we have Dominate Monster. This is one I actually would not recommend. I'm just going to talk about pretty much all the 8th level choices because there's just not a lot of ones, period. Again, we're meeting a lot of things with legendary saving throws. Like at this point, we're at least 15th level, right? So, maybe you can cast it on some sort of like powerful minion type thing that doesn't have legendary saves. Some sort of powerful beast or something, who knows, right? There is potential there, but overall, it's a charm effect. A lot of things are immune to charm effects at higher levels. There's just a lot of downsides for an 8th level spell. Like, I don't want to cast a spell and then discover, oh, they're immune to charm, or oh, they have legendary saves, and just like, they're my 8th level spell selection. So next we have Feeble Mind, and this does suffer some of the same problems we just mentioned, namely legendary saves, and it's an all or nothing spell. That said, it does target intelligence rather than wisdom, and intelligence is the best saving throw usually for us to target. It tends to be the worst saving throws the monsters have. So there is that. It's also a very powerful effect. So I don't want to hate on it too much. It's just, this is one that I used to really like back in like 1st and 2nd edition because it was just super powerful. But we didn't have things like legendary save mechanics back then. And these days we do. So it just changes the nature of how you have to play, especially with these high level spells where you're only going to have one of them, right? So overall, Feeble Mind is another one that I like but wouldn't recommend. So that brings us to the 3 choices that I actually kind of like, but none of them are like stellar recommendations in my opinion. Number 1 is Glibness. Now, I like Glibness. It's a concentration-free, long-lasting buff spell, and it's actually really, really great. It's one that I would highly recommend on a bard. My big problem with this spell, though, because nothing's perfect, is that it just makes you like really good at something that you were already really good at. You just go from a 9 to a 10 out of 10, And do I need to be a 10 out of 10 when a 9's probably good enough? Like I said, it's an 8th level spell. But on the other hand, it is one where every day I could just be like, yeah, I cast Glibness on myself. At least I can justify taking it because I'm going to use it every day in that case, right? So I don't think it's the worst choice. Next we have Mind Blank. And Mind Blank has a lot of the same things as Glibness. Just long-lasting buff spell that I could just cast myself every day and never have to think about it again. And that is pretty nice, no concentration, protects me from a lot of effects. It's one that you would use every day for the rest of your career. The problem is, though, will you actually have the effect ever go off? Like, just because I cast it on myself every day doesn't mean it's doing anything, because how often am I being scryed or mind read or anything? And if somebody does try to mind read me, and I have the spell on me so they can't, well, what's to stop them from just mind reading the fighter or the barbarian, and getting the same information out of them probably? It's one where I really like it, but it's an effect that in most campaigns, even at high levels, will just rarely ever be of use. So, it's hard to recommend it on that basis. But it is one that you could cast every day and just, set and forget and just move on with your life, which is at least kind of nice. And I have had campaigns where villains have tried to scry on us and mind read us and stuff. So I'm not saying it never happens. It's just, like I said, if they can mind read me, they can probably mind read the fighter, who doesn't have mind blank on him, presumably. So lastly, we have Power Word Stun. And as I already alluded to earlier, Power Word Stun kind of sucks as an 8th level spell, but it does have a big enough hit point threshold that, even against like a big boss, your party can get it down to like half health and you can Power Word Stun them, and there's no saving throw against that stun effect, which means that legendary saves are worthless. Magic resistance, worthless. The only problem is that hit point threshold, but, you're not functioning in a vacuum. As long as your party's damaging them, then this becomes a great way to, like, close out the combat, where you're like, thinking he's probably down to less than half, I'm going to power word stun him. And then he's just basically done at that point. So, like I said, it's not bad. They do get subsequent saving throws against the stun effect on later rounds, but not against that initial casting. And if they don't have legendary saves, that means that you could potentially have that target stunned for multiple rounds, So that could be a decent target too. Maybe you've got your big boss who has legendary saves, but he's got some sort of like healer mummy lord minion who's going to cast cleric spells on him and try to keep him alive, right? And you're like, well, that guy doesn't have legendary saves probably. Let's hit him. And he's probably got less hit points too. So we can stun him, and then we'll just tunnel the boss and come back to him later. That can be a very effective tactic. So overall, power word stun has a lot of problems, but just due to lack of competition at 8th level, it's one that I would still probably recommend for bards. Not for wizards, though. 9th level, Foresight. I really love this spell. Just giving myself or somebody else not permanent, but 8 hours of advantage on all their attacks, all their saving throws, disadvantage to be hit by other attackers. It's just an amazing spell. Especially, if I have, we're talking 17th or higher level at this point, right? So you could have a party with let's say a fighter again, right? He's making 3, maybe even 4 attacks around at 20th level. He's got 4 attacks. Maybe he's using a great weapon and he's got that -5 hit penalty. So you just give him advantage. And now he's just attacking 4 times around, permanent advantage for pretty much the entire day, and just crushing things. And that is pretty amazing. It's just a great, great buff. And like I said, no concentration, 8-hour effect. There's so much to like with Foresight. Next we have Mass Polymorph. I'm not a big fan of Mass Polymorph. It's not that the effect isn't powerful, it is. Up to 10 targets is great. And we can all be like Circe, or whatever her name is, from the Odyssey, and turn all of the soldiers into pigs. That's cool. We can also turn our own party members into whatever, like a bunch of T-Rexes or something, That could be fun too. So I'm not saying that the spell is not very good. I'm just saying that as like a crowd control spell, it's a 9th level spell. I mean, and a lot of the same type of things we could have done with something else, I guess. So again, the opportunity cost is pretty massive. We also have True Polymorph though, which I do quite like. It's probably not my first choice, but the fact that I can turn like creatures into objects and objects into creatures, it's a very interesting spell, and if you're creative with it, you can really get a lot of mileage out of it. It is one where I've sometimes, butted heads with dungeon masters over, so be aware that, the dungeon master might not want you polymorphing something into some sort of party-friendly pet that he suddenly doesn't approve of. That kind of stuff can happen, but that's why you need Dominate Monster. No, just kidding. Although actually that would be a decent combination. Maybe, who knows? Because you could pick something that doesn't have a legendary save. You see where I'm going here? Anyways, True Polymorph is very powerful. It is only single target though. So, I find there's probably better ones I would rather take. Like, I really wish we had Shapeshift or Shape Change, whatever it is on the Bard spell list. Turning into a dragon is way cooler than, turning a dragon into something else. Because they have legendary saves, so you fail. Anyways, Power Word Kill. We've already mentioned Power Word Stun. Power Word Kill has all the same drawbacks, except the hit point threshold is even lower. Although, to be fair, the kill condition is the best condition in the game. It's way better than stunning the enemy, just killing them outright. So, I'm not saying this is bad. It's just, in that same example of like the fighter, for example, right? I mean, I've had party members or even my own characters who by level like 7, 8, 9 managed to break 100 damage in a single round of combat. I think I did it once on a 7th level, like, Barbarian Warlock multi-class. Now, granted, I did crit twice in one round, and I used an Eldritch Smite, and, you know, but still, I was level 7, right? So, I mean, your 17th to 20th level fighter with his great weapon that we just mentioned, or his bow, or we're using sharpshooter, whatever else it is, and possibly with advantage, because you could have had foresight on him instead, they can easily do 100 damage in a round, especially with Action Surge. So, am I really going to use my 9th level spell slot to basically do what the fighter could have just done in one round of combat? And then he can do probably the same or close to it in the next round and the next round. I mean, he's not going to have Action Surge every round, but you know what I'm saying here. Like, it's just, at 8th level, our options were very limited, which is why Power Word Stun kind of shines a little brighter, even though it has all the same problems and is in some ways better because the hit point threshold is bigger, but in a lot of ways worse. But Power Word Kill is just really hard to justify in a lot of cases because we just have so many other options that, in my opinion, are better. But anyways, moving on to our next Power Word. Power Word Heal. Now, if I'm the primary healer in the party, then I might take this spell, I guess. It's just, I'd really, really rather have somebody else do the healing, especially like a cleric, because you know, they just have so many better options. They can be healing everybody in the party with their mass heal, and we're healing one guy. Now, granted, we are healing that one guy of all damage, right? He goes up to full. All these different status effects are removed. He could be, you know, dazed, blinded, confused, whatever. It doesn't matter. We're going to heal all of that. But it's touch, and it's a 9th level spell to heal one person. That's a huge cost, you know. So again, it's really hard for me to justify it over some of the other options. Anyways, final option, one that I absolutely love. In fact, this is probably like it's between Foresight and this spell here, which is Psychic Scream. Those are my first two choices. Psychic Scream does a ton of damage, 14 dice 6 damage, right? It also targets intelligence for a saving throw, which, as we've already mentioned, is the best saving throw that we could be targeting. And it has a powerful stun effect. Now, granted, they could pass a saving throw, in which case they're not getting stunned, unlike, say, a Power Word Stun, right? But this is a large area effect. We're hitting multiple targets. We're doing a bunch of damage. So even if they make the saving throw, they're still taking a bunch of damage on top of that. And if I'm able to hit like 7, 8, 9 targets or whatever with the spell, something's going to fail, something's getting stunned, and they're all taking some damage, maybe even a lot of damage. And like I said, it's targeting intelligence, which is great. You know, I could have like a cluster of enemies, even with the big boss with his legendary saves. I could hit all of them with the spell, and I'm not going to stun the boss. He's going to use the legendary save, even if he fails the saving throw. No problem. He's going to take half damage. But I'm going to damage him. I'm going to damage all those minions. Something's getting stunned, probably, right? Just law of averages. Assuming I have a decent charisma, which at this point I should, my spell save DC is going to be pretty hard to make. And, you know, I'm just going to be able to neutralize half these things. And they're not even just stunned for a round. They get to make more saving throws in subsequent rounds. But if they fail, they're still stunned. So, I mean, the ability to, like, combine the damage with the area effect and stun targets just makes this an amazing choice, in my opinion. I absolutely love Psychic Scream. It's just such a great, solid combat spell. And that's the thing with combat spells. I might not, you know, like, I love Demiplane. I already talked about Demiplane earlier. So, it's a bad example because it's not a bard spell. But just hear me out anyways, right? I love Demiplane. But I might not need Demiplane every day. I will get in combats every day, though. Probably. I mean, there might be some days we don't, but, you know, in that case, whatever, right? But I'm probably much more likely to die in combat than I am resting safely in my Demiplane, right? So, you know, just say the difficulty of doing nothing versus doing something, you know? So, just having combat spells that I know, like, I'm probably going to have a good fight, I'm going to be able to use this spell in that fight. If we're going to have another big fight, I'm going to be able to use this spell in that fight. And just having, like, 1 or 2 big spells and just knowing, like, okay, I'm going to use Psychic Scream in this one. I don't have Psychic Scream anymore. Well, I have Force Cage. I could use Force Cage in the next big fight. I'm going to use that there, you know? And just having these other spells that I can, you know, try to like use is kind of a big thing, right? Utility is great, but the truth is that, you know, ritual spell casting and wizards are probably the best options there. And like I said, maybe we don't have a wizard, in which case I might have to take teleport. Maybe we don't have anybody who can resurrect people, in which case I might have to take like healing and resurrection type spells. You know, if I have to, I have to. That's one of the strengths of the Bard, is that I can do all these different roles. But, you know, it's a lot, you know, it's like the jack of all trades, master of none thing, right? If I just want to be a cleric, I'm better off being a cleric. If I wanted to be a wizard, I should have just been a wizard. The strength of the Bard is that I can kind of take a bit of everything, but, you know, if I have to start doing these dedicated roles, that's really where I don't want to be in that territory a lot. I don't mind dipping in here and there and picking some of the best, right? Like I said, like Healing Word as a first level spell, it's amazing. I'm going to take that on a Bard regardless, just because it's so handy and it's so good. But does that mean I'm going to take all healing spells if we also have a cleric? Probably not. You know, I want to have other things that I can do. And, you know, like I said, we've got limited spells knowing. And unlike a sorcerer, who also sometimes has the same problem, often has the same problem, we don't have things like sorcery points to buy back spell slots. We can't, like, twin spells and hidden spells and stuff, right? Well, so even though we have the same issue as a sorcerer does, they can get so much more mileage out of the spells they have. You know, I mean, granted, we have magical secrets, so there is that, right? But, you know, whatever. Anyways, those are my thoughts on all the Bard spells of 7th through 9th level. I'm going to make another video where we're going to go through magical secrets. I did make a Bard magical secret video like a long time ago, right? Like I think back when I first started my channel. But I think all we had back then was the Player's Handbook. So obviously we've gotten more books since then. So we've got more spells to talk about. Also, like, some of my opinions on spells have changed over time, right? Some spells that I thought were really good, turns out, yeah, after using that spell a lot, I think it's okay. Or some spells that I was like, I think that spell's okay. And then I see somebody use it at the table, and I was like, man, what was I thinking? That spell's amazing. You know, so that's just experience playing the game, right? Over time, we just have more experience and more spells get cast, and you play with more people, and you're like, man, that's a clever use for that spell I hadn't thought of, or whatever, right? So, you know, we'll make a Bard Part 4 going through magical secrets. So, anyways, that's it for this video, though. Feel free to like, subscribe, ring the bell for notifications, and most importantly, leave me your comments in the comment section. I love hearing people's comments, and often having them complain about spells I missed, which I apologize. I'm only human. You know, it happens. But it's fine. It's fine. The main thing is people get the information. And a lot of times you can get really useful information also scrolling through the comment section, not just by watching the video. So anyways, that's everything for this video. I'll see you next time. Bye.